Right. Hi, Anya.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to chat with you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of
It's
course.
good to talk to you again.
Yeah, so for all the listeners, I met Anya last August on my first trip to Hawaii. One of the things I like to do when I go places is take a local ghost tour. And I feel like Hawaii has its fair share of ghosts and stories. And I'm so lucky and glad that I took the tour that I took because not only did I meet you, but Lopaka's awesome. He has so much
He
knowledge
is.
on Hawaii, and I'm so excited to dig into not only that, but all of your experiences and um, everything. So I guess we could start at the beginning.
Yes.
If you want to
Yeah.
share kind of growing up and what you were drawn to, if you had any like as an empath, any intuitions or what it was like growing up.
Well, so I'm from Hawaii. I'm indigenous on both sides, paternal and maternal side. I'm Hawaiian from my mother, and I am native, I guess, Mexican Indian from my dad. However, growing up in Hawaii was great. We are a people who are naturally spiritual, by culture. So, um, since birth, pretty much as long as I can remember, I've been able to see things. My family lineage, I come from a kahuna line. So there is a few kahuna in my lineage. And if people don't know, kahuna is kind of like a shaman, a Hawaiian shaman, and Lopaka is also a kahuna as well, who you met. But yeah, growing up, it's just a part of your culture. We're taught to be one with nature, and we have many different, very similar to the Native Americans. I don't know if you've ever spoken to a lot of Native American people, but we're very similar with that. So it was great. I mean, it's so like Neverland in Hawaii. We have a lot of, fantastical creatures and, so it's such a normal part of growing up there that it's not something like stateside where it's much more rooted in their spirituality, or I'm going to say even in their beliefs, like their religious beliefs. So although I can consider myself, for example, I'm a Christian, I'm still raised with this other belief system that is just a part of who I am. So growing up there was great. I'm so happy that I got to grow up there, because who doesn't want, to be able to have that in their in their background. But yeah, really, really blessed. And like I said, I've just been seeing things since childhood, since very, very young, as long as I can remember.
Did it ever get tricky growing up as a Christian in Hawaii with also like your own cultural beliefs too, to where it kind of like intermeshes, or did it just come natural and you were just kind of rolling with it?
To be honest, I wasn't baptized until in adulthood. So my mother was very much, we have, of course in Hawaii we have Mormons and we have Buddhists and we have, Christians, Catholics. My mom always had told my father, who's a Catholic, my father is from Mexico, so clearly Latin America, they're going to be Catholic, that she wanted me to choose my own faith. So for us, not really. It wasn't this kind of like what I see a lot of my friends here in the South go through. It was I innately, and I truly do believe that innately we do have an understanding of the creator, or, the Jesus consciousness, if you will. I'm going to say it more woo-woo than just Christian, but I feel like we're born with that, like we just innately on a soul level know. So no, no, it wasn't difficult. It was very open. I think a lot of people are very open there in particular. Now, I can say that here, that's a totally different scenario. And for those of you who don't know, I'm in Nashville, so I'm in the Bible Belt. So it's a little more strict
So you're
here when it
complete
comes to that
180, I
thing.
guess.
Yes.
And growing up,
Yeah.
when you say that you would see spirits or energy, what did it look like to you, or what were other ways that you could interpret energy? Did you notice that you were a little bit different?
Well, I started to notice I was different when I would see things and tell my mom that I would see like a woman and she couldn't see it. So we have, I don't know if you learned that, I think Lopaka had touched on that. In Hawaii, we have something called Aumakua, which is gods, right? So we have like Pele, we have Lono, who's the shark god. There's many different, gods. And our family, each family, Hawaiian family, usually has a protector god. So like one of them might be the bird, or might be a turtle, or might be a shark, or what have you. And my family in particular, our Aumakua is Pele. And so now she's all giving, she's, erupting as we speak, right, on the Big Island. So people in my family tend to see her at certain times in the flesh. Sometimes she's in flesh, sometimes she'll show up as a dog, which I've seen. I've seen her as an old woman. I've seen her also claircognizantly. You'll just know that she's there, you can feel that she's there. So it just depends how they want to show up to me. Sometimes I see spirit as, solid. Sometimes I see them as just a flicker or a glimmer, or sometimes a thought. They might, show me something via just a thought. So yeah, it just depends.
Yeah. And it's interesting because it seems like it's very like intermixed, like it all kind of works together, but there's like this baseline trust and this knowing.
Yes. Everyone, it's kind of like a muscle. You have to sort of exercise it. So I have a Hanai brother who Hanai means kind of like a calabash brother, an adopted brother. He's not really my brother, but he's Italian. He's Italian English, Italian American, and he can see. He's a medium, psychic medium. So he would be great for you to speak to as well. But he sees things differently than I do. I can actually see like a person, a spirit walk up in a room, and he gets more blocks of thought. That's how he communicates. So it's really, really fascinating. But truly, I found that it's like a muscle. You have to work at it. So whichever is your strongest one, that's usually the one that most people will cultivate, that particular modality. Whether it's some people just say, oh, I'm clairvoyant, or I'm clairsentient, or so they usually kind of focus on one and really develop those skills that way.
And I love how you describe it too, even before we started the podcast episode, about how you were just saying that you're an intuitive and you feel things, and you're a psychic, but you're not just like a psychic who's just charging for reading. It just comes natural. The way you explained it was really great.
Yeah, I personally am in the belief that there are a lot of people out there who charge for something that I feel shouldn't be. That's just my own personal belief. Yeah. Everyone needs to make a living, obviously, but I've done house clearings for no money. I mean, I just, it's kind of like, oh, there's a dark entity in my house, and someone's like, well, that's going to be $2,000. It's like, no, that's just really weird. So personally, for me, I don't charge. I kind of, if provoked and I need to go ahead and, sit and read someone, I can do it. But
right.
Yeah, I feel that a spiritual gift should be shared freely.
Yeah. Now, has it always been something that you embraced growing up and kind of developing this? Do you tend to turn it off and on at times, or is it something that's just like constantly evolving that you're kind of working with at all times?
I work with it at all times. I actually have tested the theory. If I don't listen to my intuition, life goes really bad. So I tend to really rely on that intuition, and when I second guess that and things go wrong. So it's, for me, I've always kind of leaned into that. Of course, when you're young, in your 20s, in your early 20s or whatnot, you're kind of more headstrong, or I'm going to do this, But no, for myself, I really have always tried to have mentors, or I've sought out people who can help me cultivate those gifts more. I've never shied away from it. No.
So you kind of just embraced it too. Now, when you're in it, you're as an empath, how do you tend to protect yourself when there's all this energy being thrown at you in different situations?
Well, I have learned to really set boundaries, and it's really important to set energetic boundaries, almost like a fence around you or a bubble. It is something that I tend to do if like, I think you went to Coachella, right? Mm-hmm. You were just at Coachella, I think. That is one place I definitely would be. Anytime I'm in a big group, I try to really protect myself and call on spirit or angels, or, to really kind of surround myself with white light. And it's about learning what is your own feelings and what are the feelings of others. And I had to go through a process of learning that. I mean, I thought for a long time, oh my gosh, you have depression, for example. And so I went to even see like a shrink, because I'm like, oh my gosh, do I need medication? Like, what is going on? But I really started to realize that those emotions were not mine. And it had nothing to even do with me. It was just my surroundings. So, for example, Pride. I go to Pride every year. My best friends are in the community, and that is a very tough place for me to go to, because I feel all of these people's life and kind of what they are feeling, and I go home and I immediately selenite wand myself and get into an Epsom salt bath and really just kind of cleanse. And literally takes me like 3 days to recover. So through those experiences, I've learned to protect myself before I even go out. Louisiana, New Orleans, that's another one. I go there during Halloween, and there's all kinds of things there. I don't know if you've been there. Have you been to New Orleans?
Times.
Oh man, that place, I love New Orleans a lot. It's such a I've traveled all over, and I've never felt an energy like that. It's like a portal, isn't it? Like, you walk into the French Quarter and you feel like Outlander. You feel like you're in this whole other time or something. But there's so much there that I tend to really meditate and call on protection, and then I can go out and experience what's happening.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. What you said is, like, a lot of times we're picking up other people's energy, not even realizing it, thinking it's ours. But then once you kind of separate yourself, you realize, hey, this isn't mine, it's someone else's.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot of people are, unbeknownst to them, are energy vampires, and they do exist. Sometimes when people have great energy, a lot of people might be drawn to them, and so they will tend to start sucking the energy, not even on purpose. They just kind of want to be near you or what have you, and that's understandable. However, it can get really dangerous. I mean, I've been really sick, a lot of the times, and it's just been a learning process of what works best for myself to be able to survive in the wild.
And even going out, for example, like you said, Pride or a festival, New Orleans, if you're out in a large group and maybe you're picking up some energy and maybe you're having a couple drinks, do you think like the alcohol or anything affects the vibration of the energy for you? Because sometimes before... Yeah, I'm curious.
Yes, I really do think that. I had read this really great article maybe about 5 years ago, and of course I see things anyway. So this article was written about this woman who, she turned 21, young woman. She turned 21, but she was clairvoyant. And so she went to the club, her friends wanted to take her out and do the whole, rite of passage, 21 birthday party. But what she had said is kind of what I see alcohol will kind of, it's almost like, I don't know what movie that is. Nicole Kidman is in this movie, The Golden Compass. Have you seen that movie?
I haven't, no.
The Golden Compass. It's like a fantastic fantasy movie, but the whole premise is that they have a animal. Everyone has an animal that's kind of like their spirit animal. And it's kind of a similar thing. It's kind of like your soul comes out of your body when you drink alcohol. And what happens is your body is a vessel that other things can come into it. Does this make sense? So that's how I see things happening. This is the reason why, if you look at it, right, it's, when you're drunk, you do really horrible things. Sometimes you wake up in a person's house that you don't know how you got there. A lot of I'm being very PC right now, but you know what I'm talking
anything could happen.
About. Anything could happen. And so, yes, if you're going to go ahead and definitely have fun, you really need to be a little bit more proactive on how you're protecting yourself. A lot of people I've found, the more spiritual they are, the more evolved they are in their spiritual gifts, the less alcohol or that they consume. Mm-hmm. And they'll do plant medicines, obviously, but they will not touch alcohol. It's just, it doesn't work with their body or anything like that. So it kind of, going back to that movie, it's kind of like that. It's kind of like your soul just kind of comes out of your body a little bit, and then all the little, the little darkness can be like, yes, let's party. You know what I mean? Kind of jump in. And I've seen that a lot in situations where you can I don't know about you and what your gifts are. I mean, I've tried to, I'm fascinated about you because there's so much knowledge that you've kind of picked up, and I can tell you're really kind of a student of learning about this kind of stuff. But I'd be interested to see how you kind of handle it, because of course, we all want to live, we all want to have fun, But yeah, I've seen some interesting scenarios happen,
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think it's kind of goes back to like intention, like you said, like if you're going to go out mm-hmm. and you're not looking to invite anything, or you want to remain in your own space, that you kind of just set that intention before you go out. Because not only is it not fun being hungover from alcohol, but just going out in those large crowds, like we said, you're energetically hungover, which I think is a huge part of that also, of just not feeling great the next day or 2 days.
Yeah. Or longer sometimes, people, there can be attachments that happen. I was at a concert and I had told my friend, I started having anxiety, and I don't know about you. Are you psychic? Do you have gifts? I know you have some kind of gifts, but are you intuitive?
I'd say to some extent. I think it's more of like the clear knowing. I don't visualize anything, I don't see anything, but I can definitely feel certain things in my body. That's kind of how I interpret it in certain spots. Yeah, for sure. One of my, Lopaka as well, one of our sort of, antennas for spirit is we would get anxiety attacks. It's kind of like this panicky feeling. And I don't know, I think I may have told you this that night that I met you and your mom on that, but you can kind of see him, and I do the same thing as well. Even if you watch a live of his, which he kind of gets on a lot, you can kind of see him start to almost hyperventilate a little bit. And that's when you definitely know he's locked in. Like he sees something's talking to him or whatever. And I went to a concert, and I felt so crowded because there was a lot of dead people in that room. And it was an R&B concert. So a lot of African Americans were there, and they also, that community, at least here, they experience a lot of death, a lot of loss. And oh my gosh, it was really hard. So of course my friend, he is a Reiki Master and amazing healer. His name's Nathan. He, I was like, can I hug you? Because he always has this huge aura with this huge bubble. I'm like, can I hug you? Because I just wanted to go in that little safe space. And he's like,
crowded. I'm like, I need quiet for a second. So I was kind of energy vampiring him at that moment.
But sometimes we need it too, right?
What are friends for, you know? What are friends for?
Exactly. If you can't like hug a good tree and you just have a close friend right there, that's gonna be
a friend.
Yes. Exactly.
Yes, for sure.
So when it comes to kind of just the energy exchange with other people, and you progressing with your gifts and getting to know yourself on a deeper level, have you experimented with other things such as like Reiki or different attunements of things that you've worked with on your personal journey?
Yes, for sure. Reiki, I had started in my 20s, I would say I had really started dabbling with Reiki. I found, there's some people that want to lay hands on people and they're just great healers in that way, and that's not my gift. I mean, I can do it. I think I do it in a different way though, so for me it's a lot of conversation. I'm also a photographer and a makeup artist, and so it's like I'm like the bartender, right? Like, you go to the bar and they just like tell you their life story. And it's kind of energetically, I think that I use Reiki in that way. But I am not one, at least I don't enjoy it as much as, like, for example, my friend Nathan does. They love to just heal people and kind of, assist in their own, in the healing of the client. But I did study that. I also, of course, divination tools, which is so anti, the Christians don't, but I also believe in a very broad education, because I was just having this conversation the other day. I do think that these tools were created for a reason, and I also like to know how to protect myself or others. So I like to learn about, like, for example, tarot, or dowsing rods are great, easy, anybody can do it, or even astrology, or that kind of stuff. So I had been studying that, I would say, in the good 20 years that I've been on this really strict journey of me learning and cultivating my gifts. I know what I like now to utilize, what works for me, but yeah, definitely I've gone through a lot of different belief systems and tools, and really kind of you hone in on what your favorite is and you kind of go stick with that.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I think it's so important to just experiment, and different phases of your life, or even different months of the year, seasons, you feel drawn to certain things. And I think it's about just following that.
For sure.
Because one thing can lead to another, and then before you know it, you kind of have this like broad knowledge of all of these different modalities and different things that could work together. And
Definitely.
Like you mentioned with the Reiki, I think that's really, I never thought of it like that before, like how you said that you can transfer the energy in other ways, which totally resonates with me. Like, you may not be putting your hands physically on the person at that time, but that doesn't mean that you're not giving off that energy.
Absolutely. I have a friend, she is one of the first Western women to be trained in Sedu, Tibetan healing, which is the Tibetan version of what Reiki is. She's from Australia. Her name's Tanya, and she used to be the keyboard player for Kylie Minogue back in the day. So she's also a musician. Fascinating. One of my best friends. Such a fascinating woman. But she is considered like almost like a goddess. They have a term for her, but she went into the monastery and she was trained by the monks, and it's so fascinating to see. For example, in Reiki, what we know to Reiki to be, you have to ask, may I enter into your energy field? Would you like to have a healing? And the person who's going to be receiving that energy needs to allow the healing to happen. In the Tibetan sense, they don't ask, because they're much more of, well, you're giving healing, so everyone they are entitled to healing. So she can send distance Reiki, distance Sedu from, without the without the okay from the person she might be helping. It's really, really fascinating when you see the different, like the cultural differences of the same modality, right? It's still energy work. It's really interesting. And yeah, I've been blessed to curate my group of people that I actually hang out with now that are all of the same, like you and I. We all speak the same language, you know, we're all soul family. We definitely, you know, it's harder when you kind of are not in that environment and I want to say, you know, my brother calls it the muggles, right? Well, oh my gosh, we're going to be with the muggles, you know. Hold on to your britches because we're going to be with the muggles today. But it's just you start seeing energetically how you feel around people that are not in our world. And then they look at us like, you know, we have tinfoil hats on or something, waiting for the aliens to come or whatever, you know.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. 100%. And it's interesting because I practiced Reiki for a little bit. I made it to level 2. And it was nothing against my teacher. I did the level 1 and then the level 2, but there was something that kind of gave me some resistance from moving forward to like the third or final attunement with this particular teacher or lineage. And I just kind of told myself in that moment, I was like, when the right teacher appears, like I'll know. So I mean, this was like 7 years ago, 8 years ago that I haven't done it. I mean, I still will practice it, but I'm not like furthering my the attunement.
You're not getting the master. Yeah. I feel like initially everyone should start with themselves anyway, and it's something that's great to have to work on you first, so you're still clear, you're still a clear conduit. But of course, like I said, I think if you're not, you don't need to go ahead and have that Reiki mastership. I mean, you really just don't need to, right? It's kind of, you know, there's certain, obviously they use the symbols and whatnot that they're, you know, it's a little bit more deep, but at the same time, the whole point that it shows you is that you are able to heal yourself. And that is who you really should be healing first. Everyone, you know, they say on the plane, right? Put your mask on before you help others. Because if you're not right, and in Hawaii we say if you're not pono, right? Pono means to be righteous or to come from a place of goodness and of righteousness. You shouldn't be healing anybody. Yeah. You know, it really starts from yourself first. So I think that's great. You know, just keep doing it on yourself and close friends if you'd like, and just kind of keep it going. But if you don't feel called to a specific lineage, then obviously, you know, that's great intuitively. If you're meant to, because like I said, for me in my 20s I started, and then I waited until recently to go ahead and kind of go through the rest, because I found someone who I resonated with, and it, you know, it was time. I got the clarification, this is who you have to study under. I'm like, okay, yeah.
And you got it. Yeah. And the only tool or form of divination that I'm not really a fan of is the Ouija board, which I've never done it. I don't really want to. How do you feel about that? What are your thoughts?
Listen, I am definitely one of the people in the spiritual community who likes to run towards danger. I am not afraid of the dark. I'm just not. I'm very much like, I think that's really where my calling comes from. My father is a Knight of Columbus with the Catholic Church. If you don't know, Knights of Columbus are, they help the Catholic priests do exorcisms, right? So my father has been through many exorcisms and helped the priest with them. I'm the same way in the sense that I will go and I have dealt with a lot of darkness where I'm not really afraid to go into different places, or I have seen what people might say a demon or, you know, negative entities. I have seen them with my own eyes, you know. But I think the Ouija board is definitely not okay, because you are calling forth something, and a lot of people don't know how to get rid of it, right? So what happens, and the thing is, it was sold at like Toys R Us or something. It's like the craziest thing how it's hidden in the children's section of any toy store, which is wild to me. But it's such a, any case that I have heard with massive hauntings, any kind of darkness, poltergeist activity, anything like that, a lot of the time it's a Ouija board that's the culprit. And yeah, don't ever touch one. Do not be in anything. Don't, because one of my friends had one, and she was playing with it, and her personality started to change. And her father, it was a wooden one, and her father went ahead and took a saw to it, and just like threw some of it, just like threw it away. She lived way into the valley, so they have kind of like outhouses. Put it like in the outhouse. The next day, it was perfectly fine on her bed. In like, I'm like, no.
Yeah.
No.
No.
I stay away from those. Yeah. Oh gosh. I mean, yeah, it's wild. That's wild.
In those cases to where you have like witnessed darker energy, or you see it, or you're around it, what are ways that you, because you did mention like clearing a house, or is this something that you could do yourself, or in times you've kind of like worked with other people, or what have you done in those situations?
I have worked on a couple of cases where we, both in Hawaii and on stateside, where, you can do it on your own. I think a lot of the time, though, people have to understand that negative energy, demons, whatever you want to call it, they are very attracted to fear. And so if you're, you have to be very strong. Anybody can, claim your house, right? You say you can't be here and stand firm. But at the same time, it depends on the level of a haunting or the level of anything like that. That's when they call the professionals in, because sometimes they're just not strong enough to be able to actually fight it. There are times when you can do it yourself, and then there's times where you got to bring in the professionals. But in Hawaii, for example, we utilize a lot of Hawaiian salt. There's a very popular cleansing that I have used, my family has used, and continue to use, where you get Hawaiian salt and you will put it on tea leaf, which you can also, in Hawaii, I don't know what they call it in the States, but I've never seen it stateside, but tea leaves, and then you get a cup of water, and you put it in all the entrances, doors, windows, and you leave it there. And then after 3 days, you collect everything and you drive it off your property and you dispose of it. You don't dump the water out, you just put everything in a bag and you drive it off. And it will cleanse. A lot of everyone knows salt cleanses, even in all cultures that they use salt that way. But that's one way that a lot of people, like kahunas, will tell people you can go ahead and clear a home or anything, utilizing that sort of, I'm gonna say ritual. It's not really a ritual, but but yeah, I think if you're facing something like that in your own house, it's really just remember that they are trying to break you down. That's what they want, right? They want to oppress you, essentially. So you need to stand strong and kind of set your intentions, set your boundaries. And usually they, depending on what it is, if it's like a spirit, but obviously with the darker things, you definitely want to bring in the big guns, for that. I hope that answered the question.
Oh yeah, for sure. Would you say like a lot of times people who may be going through, a darker time, whether it's depression or different things that they're going through emotionally, do you think it could be an attachment or
absolutely? I know where you're going. Yes.
Anything that. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. I know I told you before that I'm a spiritual life coach, and the reason why I am is because it mixes the psychology aspect and it kind of brings in the spiritual aspect. And there's a lot of times that, it's kind of mixing science with spirituality. Those two usually are never mixing. Now they've found more scientific proof of like the God particle. Now they're trying to get with the program sciences. So there's more data, but I have chosen kind of that I do a lot of work in spiritual life coaching, because there are times when people are under an oppression, and yet that's when they're like very suicidal, or a lot of the times they're either empathic and they just have no idea why, or there is definitely some kind of attachment that they brought from somewhere, or someone also, you know, in Hawaii, in the world, a lot of the time the spoken word is very important. So if someone jealousy, if someone is, you know, jealous of someone, a lot of these things can manifest into a dark manifestation, and you get a lot of these, you know, things happening on a mental level, right? And sometimes it is not, you know, chemical. It's actually a spiritual manifestation of something going on.
Yeah, no, I totally.
For sure.
Can see that.
Yeah.
Also. Do you notice that the energy, not even necessarily like spirit energy, but do you notice the energy as an empath different on the mainland versus being in Hawaii?
Very much so. Very much so. It's really interesting because I've lived on the West Coast and East Coast, and then now the South. Hawaii is very, how can I explain it? It's, I don't know the best way to explain it. It's so old, but it's also, I keep going back to fantasy. That's the only way I can explain it. It's things like elementals. There's a lot of elementals. There's a lot of, you know, nature feelings of, you know, nature beings and elementals. I would say when I lived in New York, it was very aggressive energy, like very aggressive. Like there was a lot of aggression. I have had some crazy things happen there. And then here in the South, it's very, I would say probably the scariest for me, because you're dealing with a lot of Native American energy. And so that, compared to me being an indigenous person, there's something very different about the South, I would say. And just the feeling, the energy of the place. This land is soaked with blood, right? I mean, soaked. So, you know, it's just a different vibe, you know, and you really can, it's very tactile. That's the only way I can explain it. In Hawaii, I think it's because it's my home. I grew up, it grew me, that I feel it's just so second nature to me. Of course, we have, you know, stories of mermaids. We have stories of, you know, all kinds of things there. It's like I said, it's like Neverland. It's very like a storybook. But here it's, yeah, just a different vibe. But definitely I would say New England, New York City, very aggressive energy there.
I want to dive into a little bit of both of those, like actually the three places that you mentioned. But I wanted to start with Hawaii and just talk a little bit more about that. If you want to just share a little bit about the Mysteries of Hawaii tour, maybe how did you meet Lopaka, and where did your friendship relationship begin?
Yes, he has been voted the best ghost tour in the country for 2 years now, which I'm so happy for him. He took over Glenn Grant's tour. Glenn Grant was the person you would go to for a lot of, you know, ghost stories and you know, a lot of the cases. A lot of people that had hauntings would call Glenn, and Lopaka became a protege of Glenn because Glenn knew that eventually he wanted to pass it to someone. I have a production company, so I also write scripts. I'm a creative producer, so I came up with this concept that I kind of wanted to create a idea that I needed to really get, you know, cross the T's and dot the I's and make sure I had all the correct information. And so I had reached out to Lopaka because, you know, he does a lot of the time, he's a consultant for film and TV. So a lot of people call him, he's very known for that. Again, he is a kahuna. He is, you know, he's just so knowledgeable. And I had wrote him an email and saying that I was going to go back home and I wanted to meet with him and kind of show him this idea that I was working on. And so we went at a sushi place, and it's really kind of it's a little nerve-wracking when you meet him at first, because he's just doesn't smile usually. He's very serious, but at the same time, that he's looking at you and he can see things with you. He's reading you. So it was kind of like, oh no, like, what is he gonna say? But it was an instant bond. He and I actually have the same family lineage, so we're related. He's just so great, such a wealth of knowledge, and so he started inviting me on his tours, and man, I mean, you went to the Waikiki, the Night Marchers tour,
yes,
right?
Mm-hmm.
But he, of course, during COVID, usually he does a bus tour, and he will go to all the haunted locations on the island. And he does them now that, COVID is not a thing, not anymore in Hawaii. He does them maybe twice a year. It is fascinating. I mean, they're not really urban legends. I mean, they're what we would call urban legends, I guess, growing up, but he actually knows like the true cases. He speaks to the people, like the police department, eyewitnesses, journalists. I mean, he does a lot of research on these. And oh man, the things that we experience is unreal. Next time you go to Hawaii, and I hope you go again, go to the downtown Honolulu tour. And they go around the grounds of the palace. And have you done that one yet?
No, next trip, hopefully. I want to do it for sure.
Oh my gosh, you have to do it. It is really, really cool. And you will always experience something. That's probably my scariest one when I go with him. But Lopaka, he's great. There's a lot of ghost tours, but he comes from a person. First of all, he is Native Hawaiian, which is really important. Secondly, he knows the actual history of what was there, and that's really important too. He's just not regurgitating ghost stories. He's actually telling why these things happen, and he can really go deep into the spiritual aspect of it. So they're family, and I love them.
Yeah, it was unlike any other ghost tour I've done. It was such an experience because he has such a presence that you can feel the first time you meet him. And what I loved about it is it was so interactive. Even him communicating with like the trees, and it was raining at the one point during ours. I think we were by like the tennis court or something, and then he was like, "I'm gonna make the rain stop," and he did. So it's just such a beautiful...
I remember that. I have that on video actually.
Oh, nice.
People. So in Hawaii, he has said that all the elements, wind, rain, sun, they have names. And so I remember it starting to drizzle, and then he started to chant. And I remember looking at you, I said, oh, he's telling the rain to stop. And it did. And you're looking at me like, what? Wow, it's like Airbender, right? It's like Airbender. I'm like, oh, you need to teach me that, Yeah.
Something so cool that I will remember always. Also, do you believe in Hawaii that the energy in certain places change based off the time of day? During the daylight, it might feel one type of way, and at night, it's different.
Yes, for sure. In general, I would say downtown. Obviously, that's the palace was there. The overthrow of the kingdom happened there, and it does take on a different vibe for sure. You can just, again, if you're sensitive, if you can see things or not, you can just really feel the energy shift and change. And there it tends, especially when it gets to be a little more desolate, which, in Honolulu, you think, oh, it's almost like New York, right? There's people everywhere in Waikiki. But there's certain places that do take on a life of its own. And, that's when things come out, right? And you're, you kind of... Even for me still, I'll stay up in Nu'uanu, and they're known for a lot of... It's on a night marcher path, And I'm still to this day kind of almost terrified to look out the window at the witching hour, because that's when a lot, the wind is blowing and things start happening. And a lot of the time, whether it doesn't matter if you're Hawaiian or Japanese or Portuguese or whatever, you will experience the same thing. So it's, yeah, for sure. It's different.
For those listening who might not be aware, could you just share a little bit about what the night marchers is about, and kind of a brief, just like
the night marchers are warriors that are on the other side. So it's a procession, a warrior procession that they tend to walk a specific path. There's also female night marchers where they have a whole procession of women as well. Usually, if you hear, my mother growing up would say that they would hear drums and they would look, might have a very large family, very large Polynesian family, but they would camp out on our family homestead, and they could hear and see the little torches, coming down the mountain. My family land happens to be on battleground, so it's one of those it just comes with invisible tenants, if you will, right? But usually what they say is, if you see that, take all your clothes off and just lay face down. It's like kind of like just showing reverence for them, for the king. They usually precede the king, the chief. So if you have a family member that is already in the procession, usually they will talk on your behalf, and so you can kind of stay alive, I have not yet heard, and I keep asking Lapaka, do you know any cases of people actually joining the night marchers? Because I have not heard that. However, I have heard a lot of accounts of people seeing them.
Oh, wow.
But I would really like to know, has anyone ever been taken by them? Yeah. I haven't heard it yet, but I'm sure he, because that changes things a little bit,
Yeah, for sure. I remember I had an old coworker, I forget where in Hawaii she lived. I think it was Oahu, maybe North Shore, but apparently it was somewhere in the path of the night marchers, and she would just have the craziest nightmares at night, and she didn't know why. And I guess this is before she researched and found out that she was on the path, and she would wake up and she would have like scratches and just all of this crazy stuff happening, and she had no idea why. And then she had later researched and found out that she was like right on the path, like her house or where she was living. So yeah, pretty scary.
Yeah, we're just in their way. They're not going to stop. Yeah. It's kind of like, well, you shouldn't have built a house there, But Lopaka Kapanui, he also wrote a book about it. There's a book that you can get on Amazon, and it's the Night Marchers, and it talks about the history. And I think that he also has maps to show the different islands and the different procession trails. Very, very interesting.
And how would you compare the energy that you pick up on of the Night Marchers compared to like the Trail of Tears in Nashville, or maybe some of the residual energy or collective energy of the city there?
There is a deep sadness. I'm right now where I'm at is very close to the Natchez Trace, right, which is the Trail of Tears. And there is definitely much more of a sadness, a sad, heavy feeling. It's different. The night marchers, I would say, are much more of they're just doing their job, right? Like they doing what they're doing. They were not told to get off their land. They're just kind of just doing what they always do. And from a Native American standpoint, I think that the energy along the Natchez Trace, which you'll find in different points, it's much more of a heaviness, much more of a sadness that you feel. It's a different feeling in that way, for sure. Yeah.
Are there any other places in Nashville that you've felt like really heavy energy or have had experiences that you'd like to share?
Yeah, there's one. I would say probably the one that sticks out the most for me is the Carton Plantation in Franklin. Because I know everyone knows about the Bell Caves, Bell Witch story. That's the American horror story is based upon that, and that's not near here. It's like maybe about 2 hours away. But here, there's it's Civil War. One of the largest battles happened in Franklin, and there's a carton plantation. And ever since I've been there, before I even moved here, I can still hear cannon fire. I mean, I've been here in Tennessee now for about 10 and a half years. So it's gone through, they have tried to renovate it or whatnot, but the floorboard, it was the main field hospital for the Battle of Franklin, which it's a plantation. The woman there, she had taken both men from both sides, and she buried them with dignity instead of just letting them rot. But the floorboards are still stained with blood.
Wow.
And so it just holds, it's like a recording, right? So, but the first time I went there, there's the cemetery, and I saw 3 ghosts, soldiers, and they started to follow me as I walked back because they were like, oh, she sees us, let's go follow her. And so I turn around, I'm like, listen, I always tell them I will come visit you guys, but like, you have to stay, do not come home with me. And I go, maybe once a year. I'll still kind of, walk through, but that's probably the creepiest place, I would say, for me. Of course, you have Indian burial mounds placed in, the Natchez Trace. I got somehow Siri, or wanted me to go on it to drive to Alabama once. There's no GPS on it, so it got me on there, and all of a sudden I'm just like on the old Natchez Trace headed towards Alabama, and I start seeing pillars of fog. They look like fog, mist, just kind of like on the sides of the road. I'm like, oh no, I know, guys, just don't scare me, okay? Please make sure you don't make my car die or anything like that. But yeah, it's a very interesting place for sure. You have to come visit so you can see it for yourself.
I do. I've been there a few times, but it's been a while since I've been there, and I feel like Nashville's growing like crazy. I'm sure, like you said, you've been there.
Oh my gosh, it's so different. Yeah. Hermitage Hotel, the other day, well, maybe about a couple months ago, at the end of last year, I had this really crazy experience there. It was almost like I was in a portal or something. Everything got super loud, and I almost wanted to pass out. And then they couldn't even lift me. It took 3 guys from maintenance, and I'm not like 400, 500 pounds or anything. But they said when they were trying to lift me up off the ground that it was like something was holding me down. And so finally, I just used all my energy to like shoot myself up, and they had guided me to a room off the side of the front desk. As soon as we closed the door, I was fine. As soon as we closed the door. And it's common occurrence. Things happen in that hotel. It's probably the most haunted hotel in the city. But, oh yeah. Wow. Never a dull moment.
Never. And I know you had mentioned New Orleans or New York earlier. Do you have any stories or experiences that you want to share from either of those places or anywhere else, really?
Oh yeah, I can't remember the name. What is the name of that one hotel? Oh gosh, that one. It was super famous. Not the Bari Hotel. It's commonly known. Some guy killed a woman. It was like a lot of during the rock and roll era. What is the name of that place? I think it starts with a C. New York City Haunted Hotel. I'm just going to find it. I had done a hair and makeup in that hotel. And what is the name of it?
Is it by Central Park? I'm trying to think location-wise.
Haunted. It's not by Central Park. What is the name of the hotel? I'm going to get that for you. But the Chelsea.
Oh,
the Chelsea Hotel. Well, when they were renovating the Chelsea Hotel, the top penthouse was still occupied, and it was this artist woman, young. Her dad lived there, and then she got it. But I never knew about that hotel, and so I had walked in. I was supposed to do a hair and makeup application. She was going to some gala or whatnot, and so they're like, "Oh yeah, I think she's not there, but you go, up to the top floor, and then you go down the hallway, and there's a little staircase that goes up. That's where the door to the penthouse is." I'm like, okay. So I go up. It's like one of those old, elevators that have the little cage, and I go in, and the door opens to the floor, and the lights are off, and it's just ice cold in there. There's a window on one side of the hallway, and there's a window all the way down the other side of the hallway, and all the rooms were the doors were removed, and they were covered with blue tarp. And I'm like, ooh, girl, this is not cute. So here I am, I'm like walking down, and there's a skylight right where the staircase is to her door. And it was like, I would look in, and I could see people still sitting, like kind of just sitting there, like just people sitting, another guy, like, I could just see it like as if there were people there. And I remember calling my mom. I was sitting under the skylight right in front of her door going, "Mom, something's definitely wrong with this place." She's like, "Oh no." So finally, it just gives you like this rush, this anxiety feeling. And I did my job, and as soon as I got into the cab, I looked it up, and it was like, oh yes, there have been a lot of ODs there. People have died from overdoses. Some people have been murdered there. People have taken their lives. I mean, oh my gosh, I said, okay. And so that's how I learned my first experience of the Chelsea Hotel. And then I was walking through Union Square, 14, that park?
Yeah.
That's where the big arch is.
Yeah.
I was walking, one night I decided to cut through the park to get to the subway, and which, I don't know, nobody should be cutting through a park at night, especially a woman, but I'm that girl. Like, yes, let's just go. And it just felt very crowded. It was just like, I started walking really fast, and I felt like all these eyes were watching me. And so I'm like, okay, what's that all about? And I look about that park, and it is a graveyard, actually. There are dead bodies under there. And I'm like, of course, So there's all these really strange, very dark, very anxiety feeling places of New York City. It's really cool though. I mean, I'm obsessed with that kind of stuff. So I'm like, ooh, yeah,
Yeah.
What else is there, But yeah.
Even a few blocks from there is where like the Triangle Shirt Factory. Did you know about that? Where they had the fire.
What triangle?
It was
no. Where is that?
Somewhere not far from that area, like maybe Chelsea Meatpacking. Maybe not that time though. But anyways, it was earlier in like the 1900s, and they had like it was more of like a sweatshop at the time, and they had a ton of like women and children in there. And it was like a clothing factory, and they didn't have like proper emergency exits. And
oh no,
there was a fire.
Did it burn down or something?
There was a fire, and the doors had all been locked, and there were many people that they had either jumped or they just were burned due to this thing. And then I think after that there were a lot of laws put in place to protect like workers and things. But yeah, I feel like there's a lot of tragedy or just like mass death.
For sure. Again, like it's such an old, it's one of the first places that were, that was occupied, from, England or whatnot. One of the first settlements. But even down where the Twin Towers were, I tend not to go down there. It's just hard. It's kind of like in Hawaii with the Arizona Memorial. I do not go. Lopaka and I both were like, no, absolutely not. We can still hear people in there. So it's just, for somebody that might have sensitive that are sensitive like that. Like a lot of the places like the Twin Towers, that location, and we tend to just kind of not, if we don't need to, we tend to stay away.
Right. Have you had any experiences in Los Angeles at all? That stick out to you?
No, not really.
No? Just curious.
No, I mean, maybe that time in my life I was just so a part of the world that I probably took a pause in the 4 years that I was there. No, not really. I'm sure there are a lot of things, but no, nothing that sticks out in my mind now.
Yeah, we have a few big crazy places like the Cecil Hotel downtown, downtown.
Oh yeah. Oh, listen, that's kind of very similar to the Chelsea Hotel, the Cecil, and the one that's right next to it. My gosh, yeah. I mean, I don't go down. I never, even when I lived there, I was never downtown. Right, so I like, who wanted to go?
Yeah, you're not missing anything.
When they were gentrifying, yeah, I mean, it was cool for a hot minute while they were trying to gentrify and kind of redo everything, and then it just went back down to what it is.
Yeah, there are definitely nice areas.
Have you been to the Cecil?
I've walked past. Actually, when I first moved here, the first month I moved here, that's when the American Horror Story Hotel came out, and that's what it was inspired by, the lobby. So I remember at that time it was still open, and I just walked into the lobby and took one picture and then walked out. And then I think shortly after that is when it closed down, and then it was shut down for a while, and then it became Section 8 housing,
hotel,
and
another
this,
little
and then that. So I saw a couple YouTube videos recently because I was just curious of the status of it. And it looks so dangerous to go inside, because I thought it would be cool just to if you don't know anything, just to kind of walk through a little bit. But there are people getting stabbed left and right, and it just looks you never want to step foot in there.
Yeah, I have been to the Sunset Tower. Sunset Tower.
I heard that.
Was it the
really
Sunset Tower?
Too. On Sunset, right?
That one is. It's on Sunset, yeah, and it's the old Beaux-Arts building.
Yeah.
I have been in there, and it is definitely creepy. You can feel vibes.
Yeah.
But for the most part, no. I mean, Mulholland maybe has at night. I would drive, on Mulholland, and of course, I don't know. You have these things constantly playing in your head that you're almost waiting to see, what is happening, but we're expecting to see something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the one woman with the 19, or for example, one of my friends is that, I don't know if you saw their grandfather apparently was the main, he was that Dr. Hodel that killed the Black Dahlia,
Yeah.
Do you know about them?
Mm-hmm.
And they made the television series. Those two sisters, Rasha and Yvette, they're actually they do have a podcast called Supernatural. And their mom is Fauna Hodel, who is the granddaughter. For the longest time, they thought maybe she was the daughter of George Hodel. But George Hodel is their grandfather. Yeah. And they're very interesting to speak to. But they're on a podcast now called Supernatural. They were a true crime podcast for a long time, obviously. But the home that Dr. Hodel used to have, that's their family. I mean, that's just wild. I never got to tour it or see it or anything like that. But yeah.
It's still on my list.
It's definitely a thing.
Yeah, I used to live in that neighborhood not far from there, and I always wanted to just visit. You get a vibe outside. I mean, it just, the way it looks is so creepy. I can only imagine what inside feels like.
Yeah, for sure.
I just have a few last minute questions, rapid fire. Do you have a favorite?
Yeah, let's do it.
A favorite spiritual tool, or anything that you rely on, whether it's visualization or mantra or anything like that?
For me, it is definitely a tool. No, I'm just, like I said, I'm very claircognizant. It just comes to me. But one thing I do not leave home without is my Saint Benedict medal. just
Nice.
in case,
Yeah.
you know. But no, I mean, in terms of, I can tell the difference when I have it on my person and when I don't. But in terms of like a tool for me to get information from, I use tarot pretty much for clarification, but it's usually like one of those things where it's like I don't need it.
Yeah.
You know, I don't really need it. So it's just, I guess my brother, other people in the community, they're my favorite tools.
Nice. Yeah, and then that kind of leads into my next question. The best advice you have for like protection or grounding, whether it's like your physical space or just energetically, like your home, anything like that. I know you mentioned the salt earlier, but is there anything else that you would suggest?
Yeah, I think again for cleansing, it's good to get an Epsom salt bath. Really, even if you put your feet in it, just really to cleanse yourself. In terms of just protection, of course, because I'm Christian, I tend to pray, but a lot of it is just kind of imagining. You know, you've heard this a million times. It's that whole white light, having it, you know, kind of around you, and it just. And also the unfailing faith that you are protected. I mean, no matter what, it's kind of like you can't question that. I really do find that when you do have strong knowledge that you are protected is when you truly are. And you have to just be steadfast in that. Yeah.
For sure. And then my last question, if we haven't covered it already, but the most haunted place that you've been to or like the scariest experience? I know that's hard to say. 'Cause there's probably so many.
I mean, I would say back in Hawaii probably be the scariest. I used to live in a haunted house on 16th Avenue, and a lot of those homes are, I mean, everybody knows like those homes are definitely haunted. But I was there for about 3 years, and it was the worst time ever. There was a dark entity that was in the basement and attacked my roommate who was living down there. Also, I mean, like the lights would go off and on. We would hear stomping up and down the corridors. The doors would slam shut and open and slam shut, and it was a lot of poltergeist energy. And probably that's the scariest location. It's hard for me to say because I experience things everywhere. So, but that would probably be it's when you're living in it on a daily basis, it really starts to take a toll on you, you know, because you just kind of, I would walk home, you know, from work or whatnot and get to the back door and be like, no, there are times when we would, you know, I would go to Waikiki and get a hotel because I was like, I am not going in here. I've walked through spirit, you know, and it's very much like that, you know, like the horror movies, right? That super long hallway with the bathroom at the end, with the light. I mean, it was like very cinematic, but that was probably the scariest. Because I was dealing with about 4 entities in there,
Wow.
and yeah, it was really, really bad. There were dead bodies under the house, so because, you know, before they would bury people on the property, so it was such a thing, so it just kind of added. But the darkness that was there, yeah, that was the scariest time for me.
And it's like you said, it's one thing to experience something or have an experience, and then it's different living in it when it's like your reality.
Yes. Well, when you know you can't go anywhere,
exactly.
Right? So it's kind of like if you go to, you know, let's go to a haunted location, you know you're going to get in your car and you're going to come home, right? And, you know, hopefully nothing followed you. But when that is your home, you know, it's a very different ball game.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say that's probably the scariest times for sure. But you are the loveliest, Tim. I am so
Thank
happy
you
that
so
I got to
much.
meet you. I
Yes,
just have to
thank
tell you,
you.
you
This
are
was
so
so much fun.
unforgettable. And I am so excited for you to just all the things that you're doing is great. And I love your podcast. You have such interesting people on it. I listen. So.
And now I have you, so I'm so excited. Do you want to
but I'm
share your social media or any ways that if anyone wanted to contact you, if they have questions or anything like that? If you want to share, you don't have to.
Yeah, they can. because I have my social media is private, but I have my business one,
Yeah.
which is Aña
Yeah,
Monique
that's
Beauty.
totally
You
fine.
won't see anything about paranormal on it, but I am always here. I have a lot of people that actually write me that might see me on a podcast or an Instagram live or something, and they ask me for advice all the time.
Yeah.
So I am here if y'all need, and
Yeah, perfect.
we're all
What's
in it together.
The at
It's
for,
what
I guess, the beauty,
makes it all fun.
the beauty one, or whatever one you want to share, and I'll just add it to the notes
At
before. So
it's at Aña Monique Beauty.
okay. Perfect. Well, thank you
So
so
they can
much.
find me there. But yeah, you are the loveliest.
You
You
are
take care.
too.
Please give a hug to your mom for me, okay?
I will.
Take care,
Hold on one
sweetheart.